I have always been a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal and supernatural events, but desperation can make a man do things that his rational mind would never accept. It was about 6 months ago when I was desperately looking for a job to pay my rent. I stumbled upon a very vague advertisement on a website asking for a night security guard. The pay was suspiciously high for a job that required absolutely no prior experience. The location was an old industrial warehouse complex located deep within the forest. When I arrived for the interview, the manager didn't even look me in the eye once. He simply handed me a heavy flashlight and a ring of rusty keys without saying a word. Then he slid a crumpled piece of paper across the metal desk with shaking hands. He told me that I could sleep during the day, but I must follow the list exactly at night. I thought he was just being eccentric or trying to haze the new guy with spooky stories. But the moment the sun went down and the heavy iron gates slammed shut behind him, I realized that the silence in this place was heavy enough to crush a person's soul. I sat down in the small security booth and unfolded the piece of paper he gave me. The handwriting was messy and frantic, as if the person writing it was in a hurry. The title at the top of the page, "Simply Read the Rules for Surviving the Night Shift." Rule number 1 stated that I must never look into the mirrors in the hallway after midnight. Rule number 2 said that if I hear crying coming from the basement, I must ignore it, because whatever is down there in the darkness is not a human being that needs help. Rule number 3 was the one that sent a cold shiver running down my spine. It said that if I see a tall man wearing a yellow raincoat standing under the lamppost, I must immediately turn off all the lights in the booth and hide under the desk. And most importantly, rule number 4 said I must never ever open the door for anyone, even if the person on the other side sounds exactly like someone I know and trust. The first couple of hours went by without anything interesting happening at all. I was actually starting to think that this was the easiest money I had ever made. But then around 12:30 in the morning, I had to go do my patrol rounds. I was walking down the long concrete hallway that connected the two main warehouses. I remembered the first rule about not looking into the mirrors after the clock struck midnight. But human curiosity is a dangerous thing, and I couldn't help but glance to my left. There was a large dusty mirror hanging on the wall, reflecting the beam of my flashlight. For a split second, I saw my own reflection walking alongside me just like normal. But then I noticed that my reflection was not holding a flashlight in its hand. And while I was walking forward, my reflection had stopped and was staring right at me. Its face was twisted into a smile that was far too wide to be anatomically possible. I panicked and ran all the way back to the security booth and locked the door tight. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird trying to escape a cage. I tried to calm myself down by telling myself it was just a hallucination from fatigue. But then 20 minutes later, I heard the sound mentioned in rule number 2. It started as a soft whimper, echoing through the ventilation ducts above my head. Then it grew louder and sounded distinctly like a woman sobbing in absolute agony. The sound was coming from the heavy steel door that led down to the basement levels. Every instinct in my body told me to go down there and help the poor woman. But I remembered the note saying that whatever is down there is not a human being. The crying slowly turned into a low guttural growl that vibrated through the floorboards. It sounded like rocks grinding together in a blender, mixed with the sound of wet meat. I put my headphones on and turned the music up to the maximum volume to drown it out. I managed to survive until 3 in the morning without having a nervous breakdown. But then I saw something moving on one of the grainy security camera monitors. Out in the parking lot underneath the only flickering street lamp that still worked, there was a figure standing perfectly still and facing directly towards the security booth. He was unnaturally tall, and his limbs looked like they had been stretched out. He was wearing a bright yellow raincoat that looked brand new, despite the rain. I felt the blood drain from my face as I remembered rule number 3 from the list. I immediately scrambled to turn off the main breaker and plunged the room into darkness. I crawled under the metal desk and pulled my knees up to my chest, shaking violently. I could hear heavy footsteps slowly crunching on the gravel outside the window. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, as if he was savoring the terror he was causing. Then there was a soft tapping sound on the glass of the window, right above my head. It wasn't a forceful knock, but a gentle rhythmic tapping like a long fingernail. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. I held my breath until my lungs felt like they were going to explode in my chest. Then the tapping stopped, and a voice called out from the other side of the door. It was the voice of the manager who had hired me earlier that afternoon. "Hey, open up, kid, I left my wallet in the office, and I really need to get it." I almost crawled out from under the desk because I was so relieved to hear him. But then I remembered the final and most important rule on the crumpled piece of paper. Never open the door, even if it sounds like someone you know and trust. I stayed silent, and tears started streaming down my face as I realized the truth. The voice on the other side started to change and distort into something else. It sounded like a corrupted audio file, skipping and replaying the same words. "Open up, kid, open up, kid, open up, kid, open up, kid." The voice became a high-pitched shriek that sounded like nothing from this earth. Then the door handle started to rattle violently, as if it was being shaken by a machine. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed to every god I could think of for the sun to rise. I must have passed out from the sheer terror and exhaustion at some point, because the next thing I knew, the sunlight was streaming through the dusty blinds. The birds were singing outside, and the heavy iron gates were automatically opening. I grabbed my backpack and ran out of that booth without even looking back once. I didn't stop running until I reached the main highway and flagged down a passing truck. I never went back to collect my paycheck, and I blocked the manager's number. But sometimes late at night, when I am alone in my new apartment in the city, I still find myself looking at the mirror in the hallway with a deep sense of dread. And last night, while I was trying to fall asleep in the safety of my own bed, I heard a familiar soft tapping sound on my bedroom window, 3 floors up. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. And I know that whatever I saw that night has finally found out where I live now.